welcome back to tonight's series on the names of God. I hope you've had an awesome first day of camp, and we're going to be continuing our look at the names of God here now. We're going to be looking tonight at one name that isn't most popular. It's a side of God that we know about, but we don't maybe know this particular name of his because it's only used once in the whole Bible. However, this side of his character is known about and mentioned many different times. It's used by a slave woman, not by a religious leader, not by a man, not by anybody of particular standing, a slave woman. And it's found in Genesis 16. Sarai and Hagar are having a big fight. Sarai hasn't been able to produce any heirs for Abraham. God promised her that she would, but there's been no sign and she's getting older. So she sent Hagar into Abraham to sleep with him and have a baby with him instead. It was a fairly common practice in those days. If the woman of the house couldn't produce an heir was needed, and so she would send her slave woman in her place. However, jealousy then brewed between Sarai and Hagar, and they had a massive fight. Hagar ran from the camp and was alone in the desert. Nowhere to go, no prospects, nothing that she could see, no one to help her. She was alone and couldn't find a way through this isolation that she felt. Until El Roi appeared. She said, God appeared to her and said, "You are pregnant, you have a promise within you. Go back to where you came from and stay there because God has seen you and God has heard you." And Hagar gives God the name El Roi, the God who sees me. Hagar was alone. She was hopeless. She was helpless. She had no one to turn to. And yet God saw her right there and right then. A woman, a slave, someone of the lowest of the low in those days. Someone who didn't matter to anybody else in those days. Hagar had ran from the camp. So what? There was plenty more slave women in place of her. But to God she mattered. To God she was important. To God he saw her. El Roi came to her. 2020 and 2021 has been a year where many of us have felt isolated, where many of us have felt alone, where many of us have struggled with mental health issues, where many of us have felt like we are in a hopeless, helpless situation. We don't know the future in front of us. GCSEs, A-levels, university, all these things have been put into a tailspin. Friendships, relationships, how do you keep them going when you can't meet up face to face? El Roi has been with you through that whole time. El Roi has seen you. El Roi still is here today. The God who sees you. What does he see? The Bible gives us many examples, as I've said before, on what God sees, on how he sees you. One of those examples is found in Genesis 16. The story we've just looked at. God sees your pain and your hurt and your hopelessness. If you feel like you're fighting a battle today that you just feel sore in, if you're facing a situation today that you just feel hurt in, maybe it's a relationship breakdown with one of your friends, maybe it's something that you're being accused of that you don't feel is right, like Hagar, God sees you. El Roi sees you. You're not alone. In Psalm 139:24, we see this again where it says, "Search me, O God, and know me. See if there be some wicked way in me." God sees your sin today. El Roi sees you. And he can help you come out of that sin if you turn to him and ask him for help today. Luke 12 verse 7 brings it right in and personal. El Roi sees you. It says that God knows the very hairs on your head that there are. That's how personally God sees you. That's how personally God knows you. El Roi, the God who sees you. Psalm 121 verse 3 tells us that he sees if our foot even stumbles. He sees the dangers that we face in life. He sees the pathway that we're taking. God sees you. Maybe you feel like you're on a pathway that you don't know where it's heading to. Maybe you don't know what's going to happen with your uni life. Maybe you're facing GCSEs this year and you don't know what way it's going to go. Maybe you're facing A-levels and you just don't know the pathway ahead. You don't know how to apply to uni. You don't know if you should go to uni. You don't know the plan that you have for your life. You don't know the plan that God has for your life. El Roi sees you. He sees the pathway that you're facing. Psalm 121:6 then says that he sees the transitions in your life. He sees the comings and the goings in your world. He sees every time you leave and every time you come back. Every time that you face a transition in your world that you just feel a bit unsteady in. It could be going from school to uni to work, relationships, relationship breakdowns, sickness, anything in your world that makes you go through something that you're just unsure about how you're going to cope with. El Roi is with you. God sees you. And finally, 2 Chronicles 16:8 says that the eyes of the Lord search for those who love him. God sees your love towards him. El Roi sees you. He sees your love towards him. How amazing is it that we have a God who sees us in all those different areas of our life. God sees you in all those different transitions that you're going through in your world. God sees you, and God doesn't just see you, but he's there to help you. He's there to support you. He's there to help you. He's there to push you forward in your relationship with him. El Roi, the God who sees. I'm so thankful that we don't just have a God who's far away, a God who sees the whole world, but we have a God who sees us up close, personal. And I'm so glad that it was a slave woman who called him that. If it had been someone of social standing who was massively important in the world, like Abraham, we may have thought to ourselves that God only sees the people who are important in this world. But it was a slave woman, a slave and a woman, the lowest of the low in society. El Roi appeared to, El Roi saw, and El Roi met her just where she was. It doesn't matter what you're standing, it doesn't matter where you come from, it doesn't matter who you are, it doesn't matter what your background is. El Roi still sees you up close and personal, and you can turn to him today with any one of your problems that you're facing, anything you're going through. You can turn to him today in your sin and ask for forgiveness. El Roi sees you and he just wants to help you. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you tomorrow night.